My name is Maya Carter, and last Christmas was the night everything I ever believed about family shattered. I was standing in the same dining room I had grown up in, staring across a table dressed in red and gold, watching my own mother tell me to get out of her house. Not just out of the dining room, not just out of the conversation. She looked me in the eye, her voice cold and sharp as broken glass, and said, "Get out now." She didn't shout, she didn't cry. She just said it like a final sentence, like a gavel slamming down at the end of a trial I didn't even know I was on. And I left, into the snow, into the dark, into the unknown. Growing up, I was always the quiet one. I wasn't the golden child. That was my sister, Jessica. Blonde, brilliant, always the first to win a medal, always the last to fail. My little brother Aaron, he was the baby. Everyone loved Aaron, he could do no wrong, even when he did. Me, I was the middle child, the forgettable one. The one who colored outside the lines and asked too many questions. I remember being 5, drawing on the walls with crayon. Instead of yelling, my mom sighed and said, "That's why you can't have nice things." That sentence stuck with me more than any spanking would have became a theme. Every time I tried to express myself, whether it was painting, writing poems, or dressing in clothes I made myself, I was told to tone it down, to act normal, to stop being weird. So I learned to shrink myself, to become invisible. But art was the one thing that made me feel seen. When I painted, I felt like I was alive. It was the only time my voice felt loud. But no one in my family took it seriously. "Artists don't make money," Dad would say, shaking his head as if I had chosen a path of guaranteed failure. "Why can't you be more like Jessica? She's going to med school." I would spend hours in my room sketching, painting, even repurposing old furniture just to give it new life. I remember once transforming an old splintered chair into a floral mosaic. When I showed it to my parents, they just said, "Why didn't you ask permission before painting that?" I had poured my soul into it. But to them, it was just vandalism. When I turned 18, I left home to attend an arts program in Chicago. I thought leaving would give me freedom, but reality hit hard. Rent was steep, food was scarce, and the loneliness was heavier than I expected. I worked 3 part-time jobs just to survive. I barely slept. I lost weight. I lost friends. But I never gave up painting. My professors saw something in me. One even compared my color sense to the early works of Georgia O'Keeffe. It was the first time I felt truly recognized. I remember calling home, excited to share the compliment. My mom's reply, "Georgia, who? Can she help pay your rent?" Still, I kept going. My roommates came and went, jobs changed, but I stayed committed to my path. I painted murals in school hallways, sold portraits at flea markets, and once got a small paycheck from a magazine for a cover illustration. That $10 check is still pinned to the corkboard above my desk. Then, in my final year, I got sick, really sick. I collapsed at work one night and ended up in the hospital with pneumonia. I had no one to call but my mom. I remember dialing her number with trembling fingers. "The hospital lights buzzing above me," she answered. Her voice was distant. "I told you that city would eat you alive." She let me come home reluctantly. I moved back into my childhood bedroom, now half storage unit, half museum of my forgotten past. Jessica was already engaged, living in a condo. Her fiancé, Aaron, was in college. I was just back. And coming back wasn't a warm welcome. It felt like exile. My artwork was pushed into the closet. My sketch pads sat in a corner, untouched. My mom filled my days with chores, since you're not working anyway. She made it clear that my presence was a burden, a disappointment she tried to cover with fake civility in front of guests. Every family dinner became a minefield. I dreaded the questions. "What are you doing with your life? Have you considered nursing school like Jessica? Aren't you too old to be chasing dreams?" Each question felt like another door slamming shut. I tried to reclaim some dignity. I reached out to local businesses and offered to paint murals or signage. Most didn't reply. A few said no. But one, a small bakery run by an older woman named Helen, said yes. She let me paint a vibrant floral mural on her back wall, and in exchange, she gave me coffee and a warm croissant each morning. She'd watch me paint, arms crossed, eyes shining. "You've got something, kid," she said one day. "Don't let anyone dim it." It was the first kind word I had heard in weeks. Helen introduced me to her nephew, who ran a struggling art blog. He did a feature on my mural, and for the first time, people started messaging me with encouragement. A few even offered commissions. Slowly, I began to feel like I was crawling out of the hole I had fallen into. But at home, things only got worse. My mom accused me of freeloading. She told her friends I was finding myself, which was code for wasting time. One night, I overheard her telling Jessica on the phone that she didn't know how much longer she could support a daughter who refused to grow up. And then came Christmas Eve. The air in the house felt heavier than usual. My mom was busy decorating, cooking, and directing people around like a general before battle. Jessica and Aaron arrived with their respective partners. Everyone had gifts stacked high, expensive ones. I could tell by the way they flaunted. The bows I had worked weeks on mine hand-painted portraits for each family member, carefully chosen and detailed. I wrapped them in brown paper and tied each with string, handwriting little notes on the tags. They looked humble next to the glossy packages around the tree. Dinner came. The table was packed, noisy, full of voices but void of warmth for me. We passed dishes, offered toasts, laughed politely. Then came the gift exchange. Everyone opened theirs with excitement. Jessica cried at her new bracelet. Aaron whooped at his smartwatch. Then they opened mine. A hush fell. Jessica looked at her portrait and muttered, "Oh, that's artistic." Aaron didn't even lift his from the paper. "You painted this?" he asked. "Cool, I guess." Then my mom opened hers, a painting of the lake where she used to take us as kids. She stared at it silently. I waited for a word, a smile, something. Instead, she pushed the wrapping paper aside and said, "I guess this is what you've been wasting your time on." The room fell quiet. My throat tightened. "It's not a waste," I whispered. Her eyes locked with mine, cold, empty. "You're almost 30, Maya. You're still living here. Still pretending that painting will save you. I've had enough." Jessica tried to interject. Aaron looked down. My father said nothing. And that's when she said it. "Get out now." I stood up slowly, trying to swallow the knot forming in my throat. My hands trembled as I gathered my coat, still hanging. By the stairs, no one stopped me. Not a single person followed. I opened the door, letting the cold wind rush in, and stepped out into the snow-covered street, leaving footprints behind that would be washed away by morning. It was Christmas Eve, and I was homeless. I had nowhere to go, but I walked anyway. I walked for what felt like hours, aimlessly wandering through quiet neighborhoods, watching families through their warmly lit windows. Laughter, music, unity. I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. Eventually, I remembered Sarah, my former art professor. She had always believed in me. I pulled out my phone with frozen fingers and called her, not expecting her to answer, but she did. "Maya." And when I heard her voice, I broke down. Through tears, I told her what happened. She didn't ask questions. She simply said, "Come." Sarah lived about 40 minutes away in a modest house nestled between snow-covered trees. When I arrived, still trembling, clothes damp, and cheeks red from the cold, she opened the door without hesitation and wrapped me in the kind of hug that makes you forget, even just for a moment, that the world can be cruel. She didn't push me to talk that night. She made tea, laid out blankets, and let me sleep on the couch. The next morning, over oatmeal and silence, she finally asked, "What now?" I didn't know. I truly didn't. My voice cracked as I admitted, "I don't even know who I am anymore." She didn't give me some speech about resilience or destiny. Instead, she pushed a sketch pad across the table. "Then start there. Redefine it." I did. I started drawing again. Sketch after sketch, pouring out the grief, the rage, the loneliness. Sarah gave me space and time. Her garage became my studio, and every day I painted like the world had stopped turning. I painted long into the night, slept wrapped in jackets, and woke up to snowflakes collecting on the garage window. The pieces that came out of that time weren't pretty. They were raw, angry, honest, and for the first time I didn't care about perfect lines or sellable ideas. I cared about telling the truth. Sarah took one look at the chaos on canvas and said, "People need to see this." She reached out to a friend, David, a gallery curator in a small art space in the city. He visited, studied my work silently, and said, "Give me 10 pieces. We'll feature you." It felt too good to be real, but it was. Those next weeks were brutal. I pushed myself past exhaustion, reliving every painful memory in color and shape. I painted scenes of Christmas dinners, of walls lined with judgment, of lonely hallways and invisible daughters. When I wasn't painting, I was helping Sarah with errands or working odd jobs to buy supplies. It was far from easy, but it was real. The night of the exhibit arrived. I wore borrowed clothes and tried to calm my shaking hands. The gallery buzzed with quiet chatter, wine glasses clinking, shoes echoing against concrete floors. Then they stopped in front of my piece of Strangers and gasped, Some cried. One woman touched a painting of a young girl sitting alone at a dinner table and whispered, "That's me." I realized then that my pain wasn't just mine. After the exhibit, things began to move. Slowly at first, a collector bought a piece. A small art magazine featured me. David invited me to speak at a local artists panel. Each little victory felt like a brick in the foundation I had never been allowed to build. Then came a message from a larger gallery in Detroit. They had seen photos from the exhibit and wanted to know more. I sent a portfolio, expecting nothing. A week later, they offered me a solo show. I cried for 2 hours. Sarah was the first to hear the news. She screamed in joy and danced in her kitchen like a teenager. "I told you, Maya, I told you you were never meant to stay small." The months leading up to the show were filled with pressure, anxiety, excitement, and doubt. I doubted myself every step of the way, but I never stopped painting. Every time I thought of quitting, I remembered my mom's words at the dinner table. Her doubt became my fuel. The Detroit show was a turning point. People came, lots of them, not just art lovers, but women, men, teenagers who had felt dismissed, invisible, pushed aside by those who should have supported them. They saw themselves in my art, and for the first time in my life, I felt like what I created mattered. Media outlets picked it up. Social media buzzed. My followers multiplied overnight. I was asked to do interviews, panels, workshops, and through it all, I stayed grounded in that same garage, painting, remembering who I was and why I started. Then, a letter arrived. It was handwritten, elegant cursive, from my mother. "Maya, I saw your name in the paper. I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry for that night. I'm sorry for a lot of things. I want to see your work. I want to understand. If you'll let me. Love." Mom, I held that letter for hours. I didn't write back right away. I carried the letter in my coat pocket for days, rereading it whenever I was alone. Part of me wanted to throw it out, to protect the fragile piece I'd built. Another part, the child inside, still yearned for her approval, for a version of her that might still exist under all the judgment. A week passed, then 2. I finally sat down and wrote, "Mom, thank you for your letter. I appreciate you reaching out. I'm open to talking on my terms. Let's start small. There's an exhibit coming up. If you want to come, you'll see me for who I am now." Maya, I mailed it and waited. The night of the exhibit came, my nerves were raw. I wore a black dress Sarah helped me pick out as people flowed in. I scanned the room, and then I saw her, my mother, alone, standing near a piece titled December 24th. It was a painting of a dinner table split down the center, one half vibrant and full of color, the other in shadow. She looked at it for a long time. Then she turned toward me. Her eyes were glassy, her lips trembled. She didn't say anything, just nodded. It wasn't a full apology. It wasn't everything I needed, but it was something. After the exhibit, my mother didn't approach me. She stayed for another 20 minutes, drifting quietly through the gallery, stopping at each painting. She lingered longest at the piece, titled Inheritance, a canvas filled with abstract shapes resembling tangled threads, some gold, some frayed and dull, some severed. Then she left, slipping out without a word. But I noticed something. She took one of the exhibit pamphlets. With her, I didn't know what to feel. Relief? Sadness? Closure? Maybe a little of all three. For the first time, though, I didn't feel like I needed her approval to be whole. The nod, the letter, her present sit was more than I had ever gotten, and less than I ever deserved. But it was enough to finally move forward. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. I was invited to showcase in Los Angeles, then New York. My story, an artist who rose from family rejection to national recognitions, circulated in online articles and morning TV shows. I was labeled a voice for the invisible, a painter of silent truths. But with each new success came the temptation of bitterness. Old wounds don't close just because people clap for you. And I wrestled daily with the voice in my head that still sounded like my mother, telling me I wasn't enough. It took time, therapy, long talks with Sarah, and many nights staring into blank canvases to silence that voice. One day, after a lecture at a university, a girl with tears in her eyes approached me. "My mom says I'll never be an artist," she whispered. "But when I saw your story, I knew I could do it." I hugged her, not just for her, but for the version of me that once needed someone to do the same. Months later, I received another letter, this time not handwritten. It was a formal invitation to my sister Jessica's baby shower. There was a note. "Hope you'll come. Mom's been asking about you. She keeps your article in her desk drawer." I debated. I paced. I cried. But eventually, I went. The house hadn't changed, the same beige walls, the same floral couch, but the air felt different. My mom greeted me at the door, not with a hug, but with something else. Humility, Maya. She said softly, "Thank you for coming. We didn't rehash the past. Not that day." But during the party, she pulled me aside, handed me a small package. Inside was a frame. It held one of my earliest paintings, the mosaic chair from my teenage years. I hadn't seen it since she threw it out. I dug it out of the garage. She said, "I didn't understand then. I'm starting to now." I cried. For everything lost, for everything found. And for the hope that maybe, just maybe, some broken things can be mended. It's been 5 years since that Christmas Eve. I have a studio now, a team, students I mentor. My art has traveled farther than I ever dreamed. But the piece that still gets the most questions, the most tears, the most resonances, December 24th. People always ask, was that a true story? I smile. It was more than true. It was my rebirth. So to anyone listening, you've ever been dismissed, told your dream was a waste, made to feel like a guest in your own family, please know this. You are not broken. You are becoming, and sometimes, rejection is the doorway to everything you are meant to be. Maya,